Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
Later we go to the Arvada Center for an on-set visit for their newest production, The Archbishop's Ceiling by Arthur Miller. But our first stop is in Aurora at the Vintage Theater. It's opening night for 6 dance lessons in 6 weeks. I met Executive Artistic Director Craig Bond in the lobby just before curtain. Well, it's been a while, not since we've been to the Vintage Theater, but since we've had a chance to talk to you on the occasion of you directing a show. It's been since last summer.
Absolutely. With Streetcar Named Desire last July, and now with 6 dance lessons in 6 weeks this time.
With so many changes that have been happening at Vintage Theater, what is it like for you to try to manage your duties as the director of the company and to then still direct a show?
I feel absolutely blessed and crazy most of the time. I think that things have been moving along at such a great pace for the company. We grew 3,000 people last year. We hit our best record financially. And now for me to be able to take a step back and say, all right, let's get back to the passion beyond raising the money. And here's a wonderful script with Dame Debbie Persoff and Preston Britton together. It's just fantastic to be able to direct again.
And since we were here for your opening night, I have to say it was a charming evening. How did you manage to compress all of that in such a tight time frame, getting that out of them in the very short rehearsal period you had?
You know, I think that they are tremendous performers, and they've really worked hard. We actually were doing, in the beginning on Mondays, 6-hour days just on dance with a little bit of dialogue. Oh. And I think that that really paid off because most rehearsals are more like 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So our double efforts on Mondays as a longer day really paid off for this show.
And we're still pretty early in your season, so you can still get new subscribers for the rest of the season.
Oh, absolutely. And 6 dance lessons and MISBEHAVIN are running through April. And then we have wonderful work coming up. The Spitfire Grill. You're getting the scoop on this. We're changing one title.
Oh, what is it?
We're going to be changing to Curtains. We will no longer be doing The Most Happy Fella. And we will still finish up with Funny Girl. So there's some great musical offerings as well as new work coming.
That's really ambitious. Most Happy Fella is a great show, but to switch in the season like that, what kind of impact is that going to have?
I think it'll be a good change for us because we were a little bit worried about the operatic piece selling a bit and decided to go more with a traditional musical theater comedy. And I think that people need that right now. I think last night was proof of that because everybody really enjoyed themselves. It was a great lighthearted evening, and I think people want to laugh right now.
And you're ending with a very ambitious piece, Funny Girl. How is a company the size of Vintage Theater going to do that?
I think that that'll be the biggest challenge of the season, kind of like Miss Saigon was for us last year. Everyone wondered about the helicopter. Now everybody's going to be wondering, well, who's going to play the Barbra Streisand role?
And are you going to change genders like you did in Miss Saigon?
No, I think we're going to keep the genders as written. But I think it'll be amazing to see the talent that will come out of Denver, out of the metro. It's not cast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You already touched on the other charming thing that's happening here right now at the Vintage Theater is Ain't Misbehavin', and you have Donnie Betts as the director. Tell me about having that here, because I love this show, and I've never seen it done here in Colorado.
You know, it was fantastic to have him here to spearhead the entire project. The other thing is that Shoshana Nicholson is one of the cast in it, and it's so nice for her to return to her dad's stage, and it's the first time that she's been performing on his stage again. And she sings a number called Daddy. I mean, it's just lovely to watch.
Well, I know it's almost curtain time for both shows. I really appreciate you giving me a little time in the lobby just before curtain. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now a highlight from 6 dance lessons in 6 weeks, starring Deborah Persoff and Preston Britton.
That was such an elaborate lie. The Seminole cat, dog,
bird, snake. All right, already. I know. Look, you were asking too many questions. I had to stay consistent.
Why, Michael?
Well, I didn't know you well enough to be honest with you. And what I did know made me cautious.
What did you know?
That your husband is a Baptist minister.
Oh, that made me.
Possibly intolerant.
Intolerant?
Yes, of gay people. I'm gay, Lily.
My husband always says hate the sin, not the sin.
Yeah, that's the bigot's anthem.
You don't even know the man.
Oh, come on, I had to rely on deductive reasoning. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. Come on, my job was on the line.
Your job.
Yes.
Your job. Don't you use your job as an excuse for deception?
Oh, that is easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Sitting up here in your fixed income, Social Security, Medicaid, heaven with a view, sipping insured daiquiris all day long. Come here, I'm going to show you. Come here, hold my hand. Your dress looks very lovely, by the way.
Second rectangle.
We match. We should take a picture. All right, ready? Follow me. All right, you're going to go back on your right foot. Are you ready?
I'll watch.
Right, left together. Again, right, left together. Walk, pivot, walk, pivot, walk. One more time. Pivot! That's it, that's basically it. Okay, all right, come on, let's try it again. Now, we're gonna spell. It's gonna help you remember, okay?
All right.
All right, ready? Here we go. And T-A-N-G-O. T-A-N-G-O. Walk, pivot! Walk, yes! Walk, pivot! Yes, you're getting it! That's lovely. Yeah, right there. Don't trip. Ready? All right, now you're going to do this one on your own, okay? You're going to spell, all right? Are you ready? Here we go. And the tango is the most sensual and romantic of the Latin dances. It was created by the gaucho of Argentina, who, after a long day and hard work on the pampas, he got his much needed R&R by picking up a cheap Uzi and getting her drunk on cheap wine, and then dragging her around the dance floor for a few measures before laying her.
Oh, is this background material standardized for the course, or do you just make it up as you go?
I simply add honesty to it.
Oh, my God.
All right, here we go. Okay, over here. All right, now, the hold is much closer than the other ballroom dances, and like sex, it's all about the execution. You ready?
I hope so.
All ready? T-A-N-G-O! Yes! T-A-N-G-O! Walk. Yes! Here we go! Now turn out, arm up! Yes, now flick the leg! Yes! Turn into me! Yes, now lean, my floozy, yes! Now step with the left. Wait.
Next, a highlight from the main stage production at the Vintage Theater, Ain't Misbehavin', directed by Donnie Betts.
No one to talk with all by myself. No one to walk with, but I'm happy on the elevation. I meet the shelf. Hey, misbehaving. Saving my love for you. And you, and you, oh, and you. I know for certain the one I love. I'm through with flirting as you've been thinking of. Misbehaving. I'm saving my love for you. Hi, Daddy.
Like that corner in a corner, don't go nowhere. What do I care? Your kiss is all I'm waiting for. Baby,
I don't say I don't care to go.
I'm home about it, just me and my neighbor's radio. I can't afford one.
Misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you, saving my love just for you. Oh, shucks, Daddy, I love the way you move. Everybody's just a singing and a dancing.
No one to talk with all by myself. No one to walk with, but hoo-ha, oh, she's a nobody. Just a little girl came to deliver some Girl Scout cookies.
Misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you.
I know for certain the one I love. What you mean you didn't know Girl Scouts deliver? They do, oh yes. And misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you.
Like that
Now we head across town to the Arvada Center in the Black Box Theater for a set visit with director of the Archbishop's Ceiling, Brett Awney. Well, we're here on your gorgeous set in the Black Box at the Arvada Center for this really, what's apparently a lush production. So tell us a little bit about the play if we don't already know about the Archbishop's Ceiling.
Sure. It was written by Arthur Miller. Death of a Salesman, All My Sons, The Crucible. This is something that
Some minor playwright they may have heard of before.
Minor playwright. I had to be brought up to speed at first. And this is actually one of his shows that is not produced quite as often as
Which is
the
why I
others.
think some viewers might not be familiar with it.
Exactly, exactly. And it's actually a very timely show right about now, very, very well chosen for what's going on in our country and in the world. In short, it takes place, as you said, in this very beautiful room in Czechoslovakia, in Prague in the 1970s. And the ceiling of the room may or may not have been bugged by the government. So the people that are here assembled for the play are moving through the show with an idea that they might be overheard, they might not, and the show deals with that sort of oppression, if you will, or how people react when they might have been overheard, how that manifests in people, and how they're able to create connections with one another even if somebody else is listening.
Well, we all know about how much our lives are exposed now, whether you're in politics or in public life anyway.
Right.
So you're right, it does have a lot of tentacles that can reach out into everyday life. Tell me how you're attacking this with your cast.
We're working at it, well, first of all, we did a lot of work just in discussion to exactly what you just said. Things like Facebook or Amazon, Google, other sites where they can track
Right, it's easy
you.
to think of social media, but
Sure.
it's more than that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that we talked about in terms of the shift between when the show takes place in the 70s and right now is that there seems to be a heightened awareness and a concern about privacy in 2015. However, we also live in a time when people openly share so much of themselves on
For
on the internet.
convenience.
Absolutely. For convenience, or to let people know what they're having for dinner or where they might be shopping. So it's interesting. We talked a lot about the sort of the conflict between a desire for privacy and a fear of intrusion, and yet that's all operating as people are sharing more and more and more of who they are and what they do.
When you're tackling material like that, it's very easy for it to feel dry and academic. But there has to be room for humor, so tell me how you're doing that.
Wow. Yes, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. It's almost like
That's
you've been
my
in
job.
rehearsal. I would expect nothing less. An interesting thing about the show is that it does, because it deals with very, very heady things, and it is, it was written in the 70s, and it has, Miller was a very smart guy. It has kind of an academic feel to it, but woven throughout, because of the relationships of these characters, there is a lot of humor, there's a lot of lightness, there's a lot of just past relationship that really brings the whole thing to life. It does not feel like a lecture.
That's good, because while some people enjoy lectures, I think more of the audience will enjoy actually learning to meet some of these characters and learning about how they're dealing with it.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, another major character in this particular production at the Arvada Center is this set.
Right. Right.
And that wouldn't necessarily always be the case. I mean, it could very easily be serviceable with just a plain set, but this
Absolutely.
is kind of glorious.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you, we were very, very fortunate. Brian Mulgrave and everyone here. I mean, there's certainly nothing uncommon. Everything that gets produced here looks magnificent. And this, because of the naturalistic style of the show, We've been discussing for months exactly how that comes to life, and Brian really wanted to lean directly into the naturalism of the show, lean into the fact that it takes place in Prague. They mention in the show that the room is probably about 400 years old. We've got the ceiling. There's a lot
And
going
you're
on.
staging in a thrust environment, which has its own challenges, but sometimes can serve what you're trying to do pretty neatly, and it looks like that might be the case here.
I think absolutely, especially with a show like this, dealing with intrusion into people's lives. I really like the idea that we come out into the audience to some degree, and that they, depending on where you're sitting in the house, you catch different angles of the action, and you're catching different things. To me, it feels a little more involved for the audience. It's not quite the presentational element. They're really in the midst of what's going on.
So we're almost ready to come for opening night. What's been the biggest surprise from when you read the text and started your plan as the director to what you have with the cast now?
You touched on it just a moment ago. The biggest surprise has been the amount of life and the amount of humor and spirit in the script. It reads, or it has the potential because of where it takes place and because it is Arthur Miller, a very thoughtful playwright, it can read somewhat dry. And the reality is, in what the magnificent cast has really brought to life, there is so much spirit in what's going on. It's been just absolutely wonderful to watch unfold.
Since you're dealing with these issues of privacy and being concerned and who's listening or watching what you're doing, has it changed how you move through the internet or social media or through your daily life at all?
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you this, it certainly changed rehearsal to some degree. There is a fear.
In what way?
Well, you see people wandering around even outside. If we're having conversations in cars, people are checking their phones. Is somebody listening on the other end of this? Are the mics on right now? It turns into a very, very different feeling. Certainly, I've thought a lot myself about what I share when I'm speaking with someone, and I think that's a lot of what's operating in the show. What would you say, and would you say the same thing if you knew you were being overheard?
And artists have that fine line because you want to connect with your audience, but you still have to be mindful of what you might be oversharing. I'm so glad you took time to share with me today and our viewers about this exciting, seldom produced play here at the Arvada Center. Thanks so much.
My pleasure, thank you.
Finally, I meet with the artistic producer at the Arvada Center, Rod Lansbury. We discuss the season-ending production, the musical A Man of No Importance. It's kind of fun to meet with you on a set instead of just sitting in the house.
I agree. I like the change myself.
The chair looks well on you.
Thank you. I had it picked out especially for this interview.
Your next musical is what we're going to talk about.
Great.
Because you're not quite ready for us to come in and see rehearsals or anything yet.
No, we haven't started rehearsals yet.
But it's going to be the next thing you do. So
Correct.
I want to get a little preview about this musical. Tell me, I don't think I've ever seen it before, so tell me a little bit about the show.
It's rarely done. It's not because there's anything wrong with it, but it's just not a well-known piece. It was first written in 2003. And so it's a completely new regional premiere for this area. No one has done it. It did not go on a national tour and through the area. So it's completely new for the Denver audiences.
So it's not just a regional premiere in the sense that it's being produced here, but it didn't even tour.
Correct.
So unless they went to New York or somewhere else,
They wouldn't have seen it. They would have had to go to Lincoln Center to see this
So
one.
give us the sort of gist of what the show is. How can we tempt people to want to come?
Well, because it's a wonderful show. It takes place in Dublin, Ireland in 1964, and it's the story of a bus conductor named Alfie Byrne and his life. And he's enamored with especially the aesthetics and styles of Oscar Wilde and his poetry and his plays. And he actually directs a small community of players, or community theater of players, the St. Imelda Players, in the basement of St. Imelda's Church.
So it's almost a backstage musical.
In some ways it is. It definitely involves all the players in that cast, and they're getting ready to do a new production of Salome, as it's referred to there.
It's that already is ripe with possibilities.
Oh, I mean, well, when you look at the fact that, I mean, the Irish are known for their storytelling. And since
among other things.
Among other things, and their Guinness. So you do have the variety. But no, when you've got Terrence McNally writing the book, you've got Flaherty and Aarons writing the music and lyrics. It's already starting out very Irish.
Yes, just a little bit.
So it very much follows through in that telling the story of Alfie Byrne and his life.
So tell me about tackling this with your cast. You haven't started rehearsals yet. What's going to be the thread that you work through to get the cast on board to tell the story that they probably haven't even seen yet?
It's a well-written story. It actually kind of goes backwards. We start almost at the end and go back through Alfie's life to where he got to that point. So it involves everybody in his life. And it's very much the working class element of Ireland, and especially Dublin at that time. So the political aspects, the religious aspects, all come into play with the storyline. I think one of the other unique elements of this piece is we'll be working with Cole Cannon, which, if you're familiar with them or not familiar with them, they are one of the local Irish bands that play quite well.
Will they be on stage?
They will be on stage.
Wow.
As opposed to being in the pit or off stage, they actually will be on stage and interact and be part of the production.
Wow. It seems when you pick a musical for the main stage that is stronger on book, you like to make sure that you get to direct that.
It's kind of it's a double-edged sword when I do that, because you also have more pressure to make it work.
Oh,
so
yes.
you could make it a simple book and just overlook that, or it takes a lot of work to actually dig deeper and bring that story to the audience.
What's the difference for you as the director in tackling the material when it has a heftier book, or at least relies more on the story and less on the spectacle?
Part of it, one of the things that I always look for in a piece, or that I try to bring out in a piece, is it's very important for me that the audience connects to the story or connects to the piece. I don't want an audience to just watch the show.
Right.
I want them to be able to connect, and that's how I know whether we've succeeded or not. And I work with the cast and explain exactly that. I want them to make that connection with the audience, and the audience connects back.
And you're going to be dealing with accents.
I certainly am. Dialects are going to be an integral part of this show.
In spoken scenes and in the singing.
Correct. In the lyrics, it's very much just the Alfie Byrne, it's B-Y-R-N-E. There are 4 different ways, depending on where you're from and what part of Ireland or Dublin. Exactly, and how that's pronounced. It's Bourne, it's Bairn, it's Bairn. So you have all of those elements that have to tie in to make those characters real.
And where is this?
This all takes place in Dublin.
In Dublin?
Yes.
So it should be a fairly recognizable accent for us.
Again, that's part of the trick, is because if you get into the outer areas and counties of Dublin, or Ireland, the accent can be very strong. Dublin tends to be a little more mingled and mixed because it's a little more cosmopolitan.
Urban, yeah.
And yet you also have to technically find that right blend of having the correct accent.
And being able to be understood.
And being able to be understood, exactly.
But the musical numbers, I have to say, I only heard a few of them when I was preparing to come and talk to you. So tell me, how do you they're not all shanties.
No, they are very Irish in their style and their base, but they also tell the story. So again, it is that Irish element of everything tells part of the story. And it's very much character driven and throughout all of those. And I mean, probably one of the most popular ones is The Streets of Dublin. And it's very upbeat, but it really, again, tells the story of that life and that excitement of Dublin.
And this is in the 60s, so it's
1964.
It's not going to be the same kind of period piece that you immediately think of when you think of Irish shows. It's a little bit more contemporary, even though it is still in the 60s, a period.
That's correct. And when you look at that period of Dublin and Ireland, there still was a lot already, that turning of contention and anti-government. There were very. It was very political at that time. The Catholic Church still had a lot of power. The censorship at that time was incredibly strong. I mean, the list of banned books at that time: Shaw, O'Casey, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Henry Mill. I mean, all of these authors, books were banned, and yet they're classics in our world today.
When do you begin?
We start rehearsals on April 7th.
On April 7th?
Yes.
So it's only a couple weeks away from when the audience gets to see this.
Correct.
And then that will be our last show that we get to see on the main stage for the summer.
That's correct. We end the season this year with that show in April, May. We're not doing a summer show this year with the change in as we move into our transition, and there will be elements of the Arvada Center that'll be a little different. So we're moving into a more standard September through May season, like most other theater companies.
What a challenging way for you to end your season, though, with a piece that we haven't seen done time and again, over and over and over again. That's going to give us a little bit to sink our teeth into.
I think it really will. I think it's a wonderful way to end the season and to tease into the new season. Again, what we do well.
Well, I really appreciate you stepping in here on this particular glorious set. I expect that we'll see another sort of lavish set on the main stage.
It will be wonderfully Irish.
A lot of wood.
And Guinness.
And Guinness. Thanks so much for making time for me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
More details and ticket information are available online at arvadacenter.org. The Archbishop's ceiling opens on March 24th. And A Man of No Importance opens on April 28th.
Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Good night.